After I broke my leg in the motorcycle accident, I was forced to use a walker for, a few months. And it was interesting because as I was using it, I discovered that there were, a lot of obstacles put in my way, not intentionally. Something as simple as the bathroom door. It made it too narrow. I had to actually have it removed. And other things had to be done to the bathroom to make it, usable. When I had to travel, getting to where I was going, I was fortunate enough here to have the elevator. But I realized that if that hadn't been put in, I wouldn't have been able to live here. And then just getting from place to place, I had to be careful what cars I used. And I had to think about how I was going to get where I was going, and was it possible to me to use a walker to get into the building? These are things I had never actually contemplated. I did a little for my uncle who had cerebral palsy, but it became very, personal in that moment for me. So often, in so many different ways, obstacles can get placed in our lives. Some intentional, some others not so intentional. And the same can be true about people coming to Jesus. Obstacles can be placed in their way. We saw that today in the story with Jesus, as they tried to prevent the children from coming to him. And it's interesting, it's one of the few times that Jesus actually gets upset in the gospel. He becomes indignant and allowed the children to come to him. And that made me to begin to think, what do we do in our own lives that truly are becoming obstacles for others to come to Christ? What are we doing how we are acting just like the disciples on that day, thinking this isn't the right person, or maybe simply it's not the right time, or whatever myriad of other excuses we can come up with, as though we have some right to prevent someone from coming to Jesus. We make some judgment upon them and think they're just not right. Maybe Jesus somehow deserves better. And I think that can happen so easily when we sort of get caught up in the ideas of the rules and the laws of the church. We kind of use them almost as a weapon against people. We allow them to become an obstacle rather than what they are intended to be, a means of building relationship. Because the reality is, you cannot have a relationship with someone where there are not rules. We all have them, whether they are spoken or not. Every relationship has rules to it, expectations. But when those rules become an end to themselves, that's where we come into a problem. We can see it today as Jesus talks about marriage. Jesus is very clear. Divorce is not allowed. And I know some people will say, that was the culture of the day. It was what it was like in that time. And actually, at the time of Jesus, people divorced more easily than they do today. Literally, the Romans divorced at the drop of a hat. If it was better for the family, they just divorced. There was no stigma attached to divorce back then, like there is today. There was one person who was opposed to divorce at the time of Jesus. That was Jesus. He was going against the culture of the day. But And this is where we can fall into a problem. When we take what Jesus has to say and see it simply in terms of black and white. And the church actually doesn't. That's the whole point of annulments. Annulments are not Catholic divorce. Rather, they look at the very core of the relationship to see, is there something wrong? Was there something wrong at the beginning that prevented this from becoming a true sacramental relationship? And there are simple things we can think about that would make that clear. If there's an abuse in a relationship, obviously God and the church would not want those people to stay together. But there are so many other factors that can open up and really help us to see why that relationship was doomed to failure from the beginning. Even though both people may have entered into it with the hopes of it being a permanent relationship. But there was something truly defective about it that they couldn't even see. And we see this most clearly about this rule in the Gospel of John when Jesus deals with the adulterous woman. He doesn't scold her. He doesn't belittle her. He doesn't do anything that the people there were expecting him to do, which was to tell everyone, start throwing stones at her. What does he do? He asks a simple question. Is there anyone here to judge you? No, neither do I. The rules are not intended to be an obstacle to bringing someone to God. They're intended to open their hearts to the Lord in a different way. We are essentially called to treat others in the same way that God treats us, because we are all sinners. This is not a church of saints. This is a church of sinners striving to become saints. We are all in the same boat. We all have the same difficulties. And there's only one reason that each and every one of us is here. It is not because we deserve to be here. It is not because we are good people. We are, again, are sinners. Each and every one of us is here because God has reached out to us with love, mercy, and compassion. And he has drawn us here because of that. And so we are called to lead others to Christ in the same way. That doesn't mean we can't tell people the choices they are making are wrong. In fact, that is actually part of love. But we cannot judge them for that choice. And we cannot exclude them because of that choice. We simply are called to bring them to Christ so that he can change their hearts. That's not our job. That's Jesus' job. May we come then to be the people that we're called to be. May we not become that obstacle in the life of another, an obstacle that prevents them from encountering Christ. May we rather be the opportunity to allow them to experience Jesus in their own lives. May we truly become the love, the mercy, and the compassion of our God.